So, I finally watched Tales of the Empire. Now, spoiler warning, of course, we're gonna be talking about everything I liked, but more importantly, everything I hated. Let's start off with the Morgan Elsbeth arc, before I dive headfirst into the dumpster fire that is the Barriss Offee arc. Overall, I actually kind of enjoyed the first 3 episodes, although at parts it was kind of
boring.
The animation and music were beautiful as always. The Grievous parts were really dark and gritty and I really enjoyed them. Except for the part when he was like pulling a General Krell and just laughing maniacally and screaming run over and over again, it just felt kind of corny. But apart from that, Grievous was really cool. Everything with Thrawn was really epic as I expected, and I totally forgot about this dude from Rebels. Like, it threw me off for a second because I knew I recognized his face, but I have not thought about him in like 6 years. However, I did have 2 problems with this first arc. First off, why exactly did we devote 40 minutes of screen time to a character that no one really cares about? I mean, this is not the fault of the actors because they do a really good job, but at least for me, I have no stakes with Morgan Elsbeth. I don't find her a particularly compelling character. So while her arc was okay, I was just kind of left wondering what Lucasfilm could have done with those first 3 episodes if they had chosen a different character and a different storyline. It also seemed a little odd to me that they spent so much time building up her backstory when they just killed her off a few months ago in the Ahsoka series. Like, I already know her demise, I already know that she gets killed off soon, so why would I really care about her story? And I know with characters like Obi-Wan or Anakin, we saw their death before we actually saw their backstory, but I feel like in those cases it's a little different because those were actually intriguing characters that people were invested in, and they wanted to know more about them. But with Morgan Elsbeth's case, I feel like no one really cares, like just let her die. The second problem I had, and maybe this is because I binged all these episodes at midnight and I was half asleep, but I was confused, what exactly was Morgan's motivation for joining the Empire? Because she said it was to get revenge on her enemies. Who exactly are her enemies? If we're referring to the separatists that slaughtered her people back in the day, like they're already dead, so I was just kind of left confused why exactly she would want to join the Empire. So for the most part, this arc was pretty enjoyable. I thought it was pretty solid. I would rewatch it again. I mean, if I was bedridden, sick with the flu for a week and nothing else was on TV, I'd watch it again. But for the most part, it was okay. It was fine. Before watching Tales of the Empire, I read quite a few comments complaining about how awful this Barriss Offee arc was. But for the first half of the arc, like the first 1.5 episodes, I actually thought it was pretty good. We got to see Barriss conflicted about the trajectory of the Empire and her new role as an Inquisitor. I was also really surprised that they included some really brutal scenes, like Barriss killing her fellow convicts, the other Inquisitor massacring an innocent village. I was kind of expecting them to Disney-fy it at the end and stop it last second, but when she actually massacred the whole village, this sounds really bad, I was kind of impressed because I didn't expect Disney to go through with it. My only real problem with the first 1.5 episodes of this arc was the super random, useless inclusion of Darth Vader. Like, the trailer built it up as if Vader was going to be some really integral part of this arc, as if he was going to train Barriss or challenge her in some way, or, as I hoped, just completely obliterate her, but he didn't do that. But instead, all he did was just sit dramatically on a throne, and that was it. The writers could have delved into the interaction between Barriss and Vader, considering Vader hates Barriss for what she did to Ahsoka, but they didn't do that. At the very least, they could have just left him out altogether, because it was just fan service, plain and simple. Just as I was starting to get invested in the storyline, the plot took a nosedive into the dumpster, starting with this interaction following Barriss's duel with the Jedi.
The Jedi are a threat to be eradicated wherever they are found.
Then you have one Jedi left to deal with.
Girl, you just told this dude that he was disillusioned and that the Jedi are corrupt, and yet now you're claiming to be one? Let's not forget that Barriss is quite literally a terrorist who terrorized the temple, murdered Jedi, stood trial and defended what she did, and basically said the Jedi are all corrupt and deserve to die. Yet we as the audience are supposed to believe that she just made a 180 within 30 seconds? Barriss is as much of a Jedi as Rey is a Skywalker. This is just really frustrating to watch as the audience because the writing is just very inconsistent and it just takes you out of the element of the story. But it gets worse. So I went on to the next episode, and at this point my expectations were essentially non-existent, and I was just watching it so that I can make this commentary video or just find content for a meme. So here's some quick thoughts. It's okay to make Barriss a monk type figure, like a neutral figure, and it kind of makes sense considering she saw the corruption of both the Jedi Order and the Empire. But that doesn't mean you become a Jedi again. It makes zero sense. And then she goes speaking fondly of the Jedi, as if you didn't murder them and terrorize them and disown them over and over. It's just so bad. Another thing that kind of annoyed me is Barriss alluding to Ahsoka as an old friend.
To see an old friend, she'll understand what to do.
That's just dumb. You framed her, you try to get her executed and take the blame for your own actions. Plus, name-dropping Ahsoka is just fan service at this point. It's getting really old. I love Ahsoka, she's my second favorite character in Star Wars, but that doesn't mean we have to include her in every project or drop her name every 30 seconds. Star Wars, dear Star Wars, not every character needs a redemption arc. Especially when it's so poorly done like this, it feels like it was written by ChatGPT. Not every character needs to survive fatal wounds. And not every story needs to evolve into its own spin-off. Self-contained stories are just fine. But at the end of this arc, considering we don't know what happens to Barriss and Lynn, we can just assume that it's gonna spin off into its own series, or they're gonna pop up in some series in the future. So those are my thoughts on Tales of the Empire. It wasn't as terrible as it could have been, but that's a pretty low bar. So I really want to hear what you guys thought about the show. If you liked it, if you hated it, just drop it in the comments below and I'll read through and reply to you guys. So thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you always.